Warfare. All right, now we dealt with fear last week, and tonight we're going to deal with anger. That was requested last week to deal with anger, and so we're going to look at that. And really, I have a whole lot of material, and if we don't get through it in 1 week, I'm not going to fly through it. But if we don't get through it tonight, we're going to continue it. Tim Blakely is going to be teaching next week, and he'll be dealing with some things spiritual warfare wise as well. Some things that he's learned, things that he's experienced, and gotten victory over. So he's going to deal with that next week, and then I'll pick up. I still have at least one more that I need to give you to kind of conclude, but I think we still have a few weeks. We have toward the end of August, so we got just a few more weeks, and I might do maybe one more of these, but I hope that you could get the formula. And I've given you enough ammunition through the last several weeks that you can apply these principles to whatever it is that you deal with, all right, the spiritual warfare that you deal with. And you should be able to recognize the spiritual warfare that's going on in your mind, and you should be able to have now the equipment to combat that. Does that make sense? Does anybody disagree with that? Do we all understand what it is now and how to have victory? Okay. All right. Well, tonight we're going to go through anger, and really we're going to go through sinful anger, what sinful anger is. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 4, verse number 26. And there's lots and lots of verses about anger, malice, wrath would be another word. If you want to do a word study and kind of go through and look at those, it'll tell you what the consequences are, what the effects are, how to have victory over it. Let's look in chapter 4, verse number 26. Be angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands, the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may be minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of God, whereby ye are sealed unto the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be ye kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. All right. So there's other words or other things that lead from anger, and we even have a list here. When you see these lists that God gives in the Bible, they're very important, and they're somewhat connected. Look in verse 31. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger. Now remember, we talked about when you allow one little foothold, one little toehold, and it can, if you don't deal with that, when the toehold starts, it can become a stronghold. And from that stronghold, they launch other attacks into other areas of life. And other spirits begin to visit you, evil spirits, and dealing with. All right, so anger is mixed in there with wrath, bitterness, clamor, evil speaking. What happens when you're mad with somebody or anger is swelling up inside of you? What happens? Usually it comes out of your mouth. Evil speaking. So it affects that. Let it be put away with you with all malice. Now malice is a step up from anger. That's almost like vengeful anger. All right? But there are several things. All right, so what are the effects? I've got some questions here that we'll answer. What are the effects of anger? What are the effects of it? Well, it ends up beginning conflicts. There's no conflict that you have in life that does not start with anger in some form or fashion. All right, all conflicts start that way. All right, also anger on one side or both sides of whatever, either with people or circumstances or whatever, can cause deep wounds because of what eventually happens. It begins to, we mouth about it, we say something about it, or we're going to talk about the way we express it here in a moment, but it can cause deep wounds. Somebody can get angry, say something, and I mean it can sever relationships. It can damage relationships. Or just having that wall built because you're angry at someone. You can build walls with people that, for instance, someone at a church gets hurt because someone else did something, whether intentional or not. And what happens is they may leave that church because they don't feel comfortable there anymore, or because of that friction that is there, that anger that has swelled up inside. And then they come and they never deal with it, and they come to another church. And then what has happened at that point, they begin to build walls of separation, and they never want to expose themselves to that hurt anymore. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what anger does. That's what anger can do. And then they basically become ineffective as a Christian, and they become ineffective as a church member because they don't want to fully engage or fully commit because they have that anger, they've never dealt with it, and it all stems from somewhere else, that somebody else did, or some circumstance that happened way in the past or way down the road. And so the deep wounds is what I'm talking about there. There's physical things that can happen, blood pressures. What happens when somebody gets really mad? I mean, some people you can see it. You can see it, they start turning red. And they're just glowing. You know what I'm talking about? Chloe, we were picking on her the other night. And it wasn't about anger. And we were just picking at her. And see how red her face gets already? And so that's just an example. That's not anger, but it just happens with some people, I'm picking at you, okay? Look, if I didn't love you, I wouldn't pick at you, all right? All right. But it also, when you have anger inside, it leads to anxiety, it leads to depression, it leads to even addictions. It can get that far because of the anger that you're holding inside. It can make you not have sound judgment when you're basing your decisions off of anger. You know what I mean? You can make... Have you ever seen somebody, they get angry and they do something like, what in the world are they thinking? But it's all based on this emotion that they've got, and they're allowing it to run wild in their heart. And it can ruin relationships. It can create struggles in the home, the job, the church, relationships. And that person becomes reactionary instead of thinking through things first. If you find somebody who has been overtaken with anger and this is a stronghold in their life, and you try to talk to them about something, what's the first thing that happens? They blow up. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, they blow up, and I mean, you can't even talk to them. It's when anger has taken a hold of their heart. So these are the effects of it, and it's destructive. I mean, it's destructive. And of course, what does Satan want to do? Steal, kill, destroy. And to devour, and to deceive, and to discourage, and that's what he wants to do in all those things. All right, so these are the effects of anger. So I think that we can understand, even in the verses that we read, it's not very often that you see God giving a timeline on something here. But go back, it says, verse 26, be ye angry and sin not, let not the sun go down upon your wrath. So this is a very dangerous emotion that we have, this thing called anger. And what does he say? How long should you entertain anger in your heart and in your mind? How long? You deal with it today. Don't wait till tomorrow. You deal with it now. You deal with it today. That's what he says. That's what he says. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Meaning, when the sun sets, you should have taken care of all the anger issues that you've got. All right? So, where does anger come from? You ever thought about this? Where does it come from? Usually, you'll get two answers. If I'm asking this in a counseling situation, I usually get one of two answers. I'll either have people, other people. If they didn't do this, I wouldn't be angry. Or a circumstance, beyond your control or whatever. It's either a person or a circumstance. That people will give you for the causes of anger or the reasons for anger, but that is not where they come from. When you're talking about other people, let's talk about our children for a moment. What if you have a child who will not listen? And you have disciplined them, and they will not listen. What does that do to you? Man, you get very agitated. All right? What about going to the doctor's office and somehow They forgot to put your name on the list, and they even called you to come, and now they're going to work you in. But they don't know when you're going to get in, so you sit there for 2 hours, and they hadn't called you back yet. Now, how you feeling now? Can you see that anger swelling up inside? What about when someone criticizes something that you worked hard on, or that you spent a lot of time with? Or they just criticize you because of a position you hold, or the thing, or something, whatever. Or circumstances. What about someone manipulating you, or a system manipulating you? What about a broken promise? Or you did something and you worked hard on it and you don't get any recognition for it. Lack of recognition. What about road rage? Oh, I hear some chuckling back there. You get angry because, look, I had to go to Georgia this past Sunday evening, and I came back Monday, and we were going down making good time, and here we go. We hit traffic, and guess what? It was a dead stop for 30 minutes. Dead stopped. So where does that come from? Where does it come from? When anger swells up inside, where does anger come from? Any guesses? All right, let me give you a scenario. Let's just say you're on vacation and you're staying in a condo. All right? And you're staying in this condo and you get there and there's a condo right beside, and you get there and it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you checked in, and man, you're getting there and you hear beating on the wall next door. You begin thinking, I hope they don't do that, a lot. So then you get dressed and you go out, you go out exploring a little bit, your first day of vacation or whatever. You get back, let's just say 4 or 5 o'clock, you kind of scoped out what's in the area, you scoped out what restaurant you want to go to for the night, and you hear it again, and you hear it beating on the wall. And you say, look, I'm not going to put up with this whole time I'm on vacation. I can't listen to this, I tell you what. And so then you go out to eat and you come back home, and then you go out to eat and have a nice meal. You get back to the condo, and then the beating is still on the wall. They're still beating on the wall. And finally, you've had enough, and you're going to go say something to them. But by this time, you're not real polite. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, you're being disturbed. They're invading my privacy and my seclusion and ruining my vacation. And you go over there and you're about to beat on the door, and you see the door cracked open a little bit, and you start hollering, "Hey!" And then somebody in the background yells, "Help!" And perhaps they have fallen in the shower and broken a hip, and they couldn't get out, and they've been banging on the wall wanting help all day. What happens to that anger then? It's gone, isn't it? So where did the anger come from? Where did it come from? All right, I want to read a verse here. Let's go to James chapter 4. I'll read it. It's kind of a lengthy. James chapter 4, verse number 1. From whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence even of your lust that war in your members? Ye lust, and ye have not. Ye kill, and desire to have, and ye cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not, because ye ask not. Ye ask, and ye receive not, because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your own lust. Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. What is the source of fightings and wars among us? What's the source of it? What's it say? It comes from our own lust. It comes from inside. It comes from down deep. Because down deep, you know what? We're selfish creatures. You remember that whole scenario that I gave you? They're ruining my vacation. What do you think about the vacation, that person that broke their hip in the shower? They ruined my peace. They disturbed me. So let me just say, remember in Ephesians 6 what we were talking about? It says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers. So the person that was knocking on the wall, is that the enemy? Is that the enemy? Who's the enemy? Here's what happens in that scenario is you're sitting there and you allow it to happen in your mind. Who do they think they are beating on these walls? Don't they know they're disturbing me? Don't they know I'm on vacation? And you start rehearsing all these things in your mind. And the devil, because he's stirring that up. He's stirring it up inside. And now, again, remember I told you he uses the world and he uses your flesh. Remember that? And this is part of the way he uses your flesh. So Genesis chapter 4, remember the story. This is Cain and Abel. Remember the story of Cain and Abel. Well, let's go read it. And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought forth of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel also brought of the firstling of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth. Now that word wroth is angry, wrathful, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth? Why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? If thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him. Where did that anger? Where was the anger from? Did his brother do anything to him? Did God do anything to him? God was trying to help him. But that anger swelled up inside, and what did it cause? It caused him to kill his brother. It caused him to be angry with God. It caused all sorts of things. His countenance fell. That means that he looked sad. I mean, he wasn't happy. His facial expressions showed it. So all of these things can stem from, jealousy, criticism, constant criticism, unfair treatment, unresolved hurts, fear, insecurity, abuse, pride of life, fatigue, sometimes anger when we're tired. That's a time when Satan comes along and he knows it. You remember he's a roaring lion walking about seeking whom he may devour? Well, he'll walk around your life 1,000 times to find that one little crack in the door. And when he finds that one little crack in the door, that's when he pounces. All right, and so when we're tired, have you ever been just completely exhausted, and then somebody says something that just sets you off? You know what I'm talking about? But it's at your weak moment, and there it is. There's anger. All right, so where does it come from? Somebody help me. Where does it come from? Where does anger come from? It comes from down deep inside, from your own lust. Because at the heart of it is what I want, what I desire, what I deserve, That's at the heart of it. That's at the heart of anger. All right, so what is anger? It is an emotion. And let me just say that we're made in God's image. God has emotions as well. And we're made in God's image. But we can use these, they are good, but they can be used for evil. And I'm not going to have time tonight to talk about good anger. I'm talking about sinful anger tonight. That's why I said we may next time talk about sinless anger. So what is anger? It is an emotion. It can also be a conditioned response. And I want to give you an example of this, because we can blame others for everything. If you grew up in a home where the mother and father were always yelling, all right, what is your, and the child, that's what they grew up in. Charlie, you got a C on your report card? Don't you know that you're smarter than that? And if that's the reaction that they're used to all the time, it is something that they carry over, and it's something they've learned, and their environment has picked that up, and they will continue that. And it's just an explosive response to some type of something that they didn't like, or some type of circumstance they didn't like, and or something didn't go as planned. And people can also use anger as a tool. For instance, it's a manipulation tool. I can get mad, Charlie, I'm using you tonight, all right? I can get mad at Charlie and get upset because Charlie won't do, I asked Charlie to do something and he won't do what I asked him to do. So I get mad at Charlie and I let him know, and I express my anger towards him, and so as to try to manipulate him into doing what I want him to do. That happens in marriages. That happens in work relationships. That happens all over the place to try to manipulate. Anger is used as a tool sometimes to do that. And so how do we deal with anger? How do we express it? We can express it outwardly. We can express it physically. There are some people, when anger rises up inside of them, they will express it physically. They will be abusive, or they will be verbally abusive, or they will express it vocally. There is something. It's just when anger hits, I mean, it hits everybody. All right, and so that's what happens. They can give emotional, verbal threats, or they can also do it passive aggressively. This means if I make Faye mad, and so she gives me the silent treatment for 3 days. She's just letting me know she's mad. You understand what I'm saying? Without telling me, without confronting me, it's a passive-aggressive behavior. She's just being silent. Or if she normally, if she normally fixes supper, or normally washes clothes. Let's say if she normally washes your clothes, then all of a sudden there's no clean clothes. She's letting you know that she's mad about something. You understand what I'm saying? This is a passive. This is how some people express that. All right, how do you express it? I don't know. All right, what about suppressing it? There are some people who express it outwardly. There are some people who suppress it. They push it down inside, and man, they keep pushing it down inside until eventually they can't hold it anymore. And then it's a violent. You can have a cool, calm mannered person, and they have been suppressing those angers over and over and over, and then eventually it just erupts. All right, because they suppressed it for so long, like a volcano. All right, but when they begin to suppress things like that, they begin to avoid people. They begin to avoid circumstances. They can refuse communication, and they refuse to engage in activities. Let's just say if you have a family member whom you're mad at, and you have suppressed anger towards that person, they did something or said something or whatever, and they're going to be at a family reunion or a birthday party, and you know they're going to be at that family reunion or at that birthday party, and so you purposely say, I'm not going to that family reunion, I'm not going to that birthday party, because I'm mad, I'm angry. And I'm going to just avoid it, and I'm just going to suppress it. I'm not going to deal with it. I'm just going to keep it there, and I'm going to leave it there, and that's how I'm going to deal with it. And sometimes we withdraw, not just physically, but we can withdraw. We can be somewhere and not there. You understand what I'm saying? I can be riding in the car with my wife. Physically, I'm there, but mentally and emotionally, I can be far away. I can distance myself. You understand what I'm saying? And so you can do that as well. Sometimes we try to rename it to justify it. I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. Or you begin to criticize the other person. But you're renaming anger to try to lessen the effects or lessen the harshness of the sin that you're engaged in. Does that make sense? That's how we do when we suppress it. You know, I was just frustrated with this person. No, you were angry. You had anger. All right. So why or all right? So we express it, we suppress it, or we confess it. All right, and then this is how we deal with it. We confess it, agreeing and admitting with God that He's right and we're wrong, and that this is a sin, this is anger, and I'm agreeing. Ask God to forgive us, and if we need to, we ask the other person to forgive us. All right, I'm not going to go through all the Bible for that because there's some other places I want to go. All right. Why do we hold on to anger? Why do we hold on to it? Because we attempt to justify it. All right, we attempt to justify it in our mind. In other words, we have a right to be angry because of what somebody did or some circumstances that came along. We deserve to be angry, and because they deserve my anger towards them. You know what I'm talking about? They deserve my anger towards them, so that's why I'm holding on to it. It also sometimes we hold on to it because it makes us feel superior. Or we hold on to that anger because it makes them feel inferior, or we try to make them feel inferior. We hold on to it because we kind of keep score. You ever forgot somebody's birthday? And they get angry about it? I owe you one. Remember, somebody's keeping score. Be honest, guys, you ever forgot an anniversary? Nobody? Okay, we had a lady that forgot the anniversary, all right. And, you know, and then the other person can feel hurt because of that, and anger can swell up inside because of that. And then they begin to keep score. Well, you forgot this, so I'm going to, you know, a retaliation attitude. And anger at the heart of it is a fleshly way to fulfill our need for love, acceptance, security, and significance. It's all about self. It's all about I want control and what they did to me, refusing to admit wrong, accept others for who they are, to resolve past hurts and insecurities. That's at the heart of what anger really is. So how do we get victory over this? Let's see what time it is. All right, we got plenty of time. Good. All right, the first thing that I want us to remember is who we are. Now, I'm speaking to believers here. All right? Remember who you're identified with. All right? If we say that we're a Christian, that means we identify ourselves with Jesus Christ. As a matter of fact, this past Sunday, we talked about sanctification and being more and more like Jesus. That's what the Lord is trying to do. Do you realize, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but do you realize that God allows situations and God allows people into your life, and sometimes He does that so that that anger that's inside is brought to the surface for you to recognize it. Because where does it come from? Sometimes it's down, it's suppressed. Sometimes we forget all about it, but it's still there. But God brings people into our life. Sometimes your spouse, sometimes a friend, sometimes a coworker, to bring that to the surface so that we can deal with it. Sometimes God's using another person. Sometimes God is using a circumstance to bring that to your attention, to bring that to your mind so that you can deal with that. So, if we're Christians, again, at the very heart of this is we have to understand who we are, but we also have to understand whose we are. Somebody read 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Charlie, you can take that back there. Have somebody read that. 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Who's going to get that? All right, Hope. 19 and 20. Read loud, please.
You said First
1 Corinthians 6,
Okay.
19 and 20.
What, know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own? For ye are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's.
Okay. Whose are we? No, ye are not your own. Isn't that what that says? We've been bought with a price. We are God's. We are His. So, I'm trying to get to a point here. If we are His, and God allows these circumstances, what is He doing? He's using that, what's the word? To make us more and more like Jesus. What's that word? Sanctification. There we go. Thank you. He's using that to sanctify us, all right, to make us more and more like Him, to let us know that we're His. And look, when somebody does something, look, if everything that we have and everything that we are given to the Lord, if our time is given to the Lord, if our car is given to the Lord, all right, let's just, I get a new car. The Lord has given me a new car. All right, let's just think about this for a minute. If you have a new car and you have given that car to the Lord, that's your car, Lord. You gave it to me. I use it for your glory. You know, it's yours anyway. And then you get in a wreck and somebody hits your car. Do you have a right to get angry? Did God give you that car? I mean, yeah, He gave you the strength maybe to work to pay for it. But ultimately, God, all good gifts come from God. And so God gave you that car. So if it gets wrecked, or can God do with what He will with His stuff? Do we have a right to be angry about that? So this is what I'm getting to. We think that we have rights to all these things, but really, we are the Lord's, and all the rights are His. Does that make sense? Our time. I'm about to go on vacation next week. Woo-hoo! But look, that vacation is His. You know, He's allowing me to go on it. If something unforeseen happens, God allows it. If my flight gets canceled for whatever reason, guess what? God has a reason for it. It's not for me to get angry and upset. God has a plan. As a matter of fact, let's just say somebody wrongs you. Do you think you have a right? Look, you're God's. You understand? You are God's. And let's just say somebody wrongs you. Somebody read Romans 12:19. All right, Noah. Hang on, Charlie's coming. Yep.
Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord.
All right, when we have anger that wells up inside, we hold on to that, it becomes a grudge. All right? And we're holding that grudge simply as a retaliation against the wrong or against the person that we feel has wronged us. Is that not true? And we're doing that in a form of vengeance, in a form of retaliation. That's what we're holding on to. Whether we act out against it or not, but that's what we're holding inside. We're holding that inside as a venge tool. Are you with me? It's like unforgiveness. It's really a lot like it, closely related. But what does it say? It says, vengeance is mine, I will repay, say the Lord. So somebody does you wrong. Now remember the whole spiritual warfare. Remember the shield of faith. Trusting His word, trusting the Lord. All right, so now anger begins to swell up inside, and it's toward a person because of something they did. What do we have to remember? We have to remember who we are and whose we are. We've read some verses about that. And then we have to make the choice of we're going to trust the Lord to take care of that or not. I'm going to take care of it by holding on to it and having that anger, and it's going to turn to a grudge, and it's going to turn to bitterness, and it's going to turn to wrath, and it's going to turn to malice, it's going to turn to vengeance, it's going to turn to all that stuff. Or I can say, you know what, the Lord's got this. I'm his. He's mine. He's going to take care of it. Everything that I have is his. And you know what? They've not wronged me. They've wronged him. All right, so when Cain killed Abel, who was Cain angry with? He was actually angry with God. So we can choose to let them off of our hook and put them on God's hook, knowing that God's going to take care of it and God's going to deal with it. Now, I'm not saying that there sometimes shouldn't be a conversation to remedy or to reconcile relationships. That sometimes that is necessary. But just to harbor ill feelings, and there's another way that people do. Let's just say if somebody does something to Hope, and now I'm taking up an offense against that person because I like Hope. I don't know everything about the circumstance, but you know what? They did you wrong. And so now I'm going to have a grudge against this person. And sometimes I'm just having a grudge against that person. I'm not even getting the whole story. It's not our job to hold grudges and to carry anger in our heart towards anyone. Because we have to trust the Lord that He's going to take care of it and He's going to deal with it. All right, let's look. Our example in all of this is always Jesus, right? Our example. And so I want us to go in Philippians chapter 2. Who's getting that? Anybody? All right, Kevin. Philippians chapter 2, 5 through 8.
Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. You said through 9?
No, that's good. Through 8. Let me ask you something. In the life of Jesus, was Jesus ever wronged in his life? Let's go a little further down his life. Let's go when he's getting closer to the crucifixion. Was Jesus done wrong? He went through a mock trial that was all trumped up charges, remember? Does it show him displaying anger? What does it say? He says he opened out his mouth. What about somebody stealing something from you? Well, let me just say that at the cross, Jesus, his clothes were taken from him, and they were casting lots to see who was going to get them. As a matter of fact, he was being made fun of while he was on the cross, remember? But what was his words? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. You see the example that he set? Matter of fact, let's go to 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 21. Who's got that? Miss Ann, you got it? I think I see. I thought I saw your hand up right there. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse number 21.
For even hereunto were you called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps.
He's our example. We're supposed to follow in his steps. As a matter of fact, it says when he reviled not again. I think there was that in that verse? Was that in that, Miss Ann? Hold on. Keep going. Keep going. That's good. That's good, Miss Ann. But what it says, when he was reviled, he reviled not again. When he suffered, he opened not his mouth. He didn't spout off. Now, when we begin to suffer, what do? When that anger swells up? Let me tell you something. And it's all about the rights that we think that we have, and really and truly, the rights that we think that we have should be forfeited to God because we're His, and we've been bought, and we're His own. We are owned by Him. I mean, you can look at it that way. And so the rights that we think we have, we really don't have. We're God's property, and God will deal with that. You understand what I'm saying? God, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. It's not up to us to correct everybody. It's not up to us to fix every situation, but it is up to us to deal with the anger that swells up inside. So let me give you a couple verses here, and I've got several. Let's see what time it is. All right, we're almost time here. Somebody get Proverbs 19:11. I'm going to hand these out real quick. Who's getting that? Raise your hand. Proverbs 19:11. John's getting that one. All right, James 1:19 and 20. Miss Ann's getting that one. Luke 6:31. Who's getting that one? Hope. Ephesians 4:26-27. Who's getting that one? All right, Sherry. Colossians 3. Who's going to that one? All right, Lee. All right, that's it. Who's got Proverbs 19:11? Read that one.
The discretion of a man deferreth his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression.
Say it loud again. I could.
The discretion of a man deferreth his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression.
To pass over a transgression. Let things go. That's what it's saying. Let it go. All right. Who was? I think Miss Ann was next. That's James 1:19 and 20.
Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God.
Is that 20
Yes.
also?
Yeah, 19,
Okay.
20.
The wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. So what does it work? Unrighteousness, okay? All right, Luke 6:31. Who's got that one? Hope.
Okay, there we go. And as ye would that men should do to you, do ye also to them likewise.
Yeah. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do you want to be misunderstood? Do you want to cause anger? Do you understand what I'm saying? You treat others like you want to be treated. It doesn't matter how they treat you. You treat them how you would want to be treated. All right. Ephesians chapter 4, who had that one? 26 and 27.
Be ye angry, and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil.
All right, also read 31 and 32.
Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be ye kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you.
Okay. So we forgive others because Christ has forgiven us. So here's the thing. When we see that anger begin to swell up inside, how do we deal with that? We say, Lord, I need you to forgive me for this. I know it's wrong, and I'm not going to concoct, just like the scenario of the person beating on the wall. We begin to concoct scenarios in our mind of what's going on. You understand what I'm saying? We don't even have all the picture. We don't even have all the pieces of the puzzle. And here's the thing. Sometimes we'll never have all the pieces of the puzzle, but there's somebody who does. And that's why we have to trust him above everything. And it doesn't matter what circumstance, what person comes into our life, what things happen, we have to trust him anyway. And so it says to get rid of it before the sun goes down. It says to put it away from you. So we have to confess it, forsake it, and also get us a verse that when we see that anger welling up inside, we put that verse inside of there to combat the devil when he's throwing all these thoughts at us. I've got one other. Who had Colossians? Lee, chapter 3, verse number 8. Read 8.
But now ye also put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth.
All right, and now read 12 and 13.
Put on therefore as the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercies, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, longsuffering, forbearing one another and forgiving one another, if any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye.
All right, in the first part of that, he's talking about put it away from you, wrath and malice and anger and all that. And he's saying being kind, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. And so this is what we have to do. This is how we overcome anger, is when we see it happening, we see it welling up inside, we deal with it at that moment. Not we stew on it for 3 days. We deal with it at that moment, knowing that it's sin, knowing that, and let me just throw something else at you. If somebody does something to you, I want you to realize, did Jesus die just for you, or did he die for both of you? He died for both of you. All right, so we have to keep that in mind. We have to keep that in mind. He didn't die just for you. He did die for you, but he died for both parties. And so we have to be the example. We have to forgive. We have to be long-suffering. We have to, just like the example that Jesus Christ gave, Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And in the midst of losing his garments, in the midst of shame, in the midst of being wrongly accused, in the midst of being made fun of, in the midst of being beaten, in the midst of being whipped, in the midst of being hit, beard pulled out, all those kind of stuff. And he even utters those words, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. If somebody does something purposefully to anger someone, whose control are they under? That's exactly right. I'm going to talk more about that. I'm going to conclude with that line of thought when we get there. But anyway, all right, anger. It's destructive. All right, it is destructive, but it can be overcome. And there are some people, this is their besetting sin. They have anger inside, and I'm going to tell you, they blow up, or they suppress it, and then eventually blow up. But how do we deal with it? We have to deal with it when it happens. We have to deal with it right then. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Because if you don't, that's giving place to the devil. That's what Ephesians says. All right, so we have to deal with it then. We don't stew on it. We confess it. We agree with God that it's sin. We ask God to forgive us, and if need be, we ask the person, if we blew up or we did something we shouldn't, we go ask forgiveness from that person. All right, if somebody wronged us, it's not necessarily, you might can talk to them about that if it needs to be, but sometimes it's just a misunderstanding or a misconstrue of a situation that the devil is playing tricks in your mind about the whole thing. Does that make sense? How many times have you got mad about something and didn't know all the details, and then when you finally find out the details, it's nowhere near what you thought? You understand what I'm saying? And you've allowed that anger to be swelled up for no reason. You have to deal with it. You have to confess it. You have to forsake it. Find you a verse also about trusting the Lord instead of trusting my feelings. Trusting the Lord instead of trusting my rights. Remember, you sacrifice your own rights for the sake of Christ. Just like he did. He became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. You have to sacrifice your rights. And find a verse for that. You're not your own. You're bought with a price. Lord, I'm dealing with something right here. And I'm going to tell you, if you don't help me, I'm going to be angry. Lord, I know that anger is wrong, and I need to confess it, and it's sin. I need your help, and Lord, I'm going to claim this verse. And I know you're going to deal with this. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. I know you're going to deal with this, and Lord, help me to trust you. I'm going to trust you in this, that you're going to deal with this, and I'm going to take it off my hook and off my plate, and I'm going to put it on yours and let you deal with it. But I'm not going to hold on to it, and I'm not going to carry it. I'm going to deal with it right now. Does that make sense? All right, let's bow for word of prayer. Father, we love you. Thank you for this day. Thank you for your word. And Lord, how you teach us from your word. And Lord, how we can have victory in our life. And Lord, I pray that we'd use some of these verses, use some of these thoughts to help us be more and more like you in the coming days. Thank you again for loving us, being good to us. I pray for each prayer request that was mentioned. And Lord, those that have surgeries, those who have bereavements, and Lord, I pray you'd uplift them, encourage them, strengthen them like only you can. Lord, we just want to thank you again for who you are and what you're going to do for us. In Jesus' name, amen.